Oak Hill is a grand 19th century mansion sitting on 1,240 acres, located about 7 miles east of Middleburg in Aldie, Virginia, at the corner of routes 50 and 15. It was the home of the 5th President of the United States, James Monroe. Sadly, Monroe's parents died by the time he was 16, and he became the ward of his uncle, Judge Joseph Jones. Monroe dropped out of William and Mary to bravely serve in the Revolutionary War. Afterwards, he became a lawyer and eventually married Elizabeth Courtwright of New York. He embarked on a distinguished political career that would last more than 4 decades. In 1794, Monroe and his guardian uncle purchased a 4,400-acre plantation in Loudoun County, Virginia, although he remained in Charlottesville. His uncle died in 1805 without an heir, and Monroe became the sole owner of the vast property. When he became president in 1817, Monroe and his family moved closer to Washington to live in the 6-room overseer's house on the Loudoun farm. In 1820, he began the construction of Oak Hill, a Greek Revival-style brick mansion with a large pillared portico. It was a 2.5-story house on a stone foundation with a raised basement. The bricks were made locally at Pot House, a few miles north of Middleburg. Several persons were involved in the design: Thomas Jefferson, Colonel George Bomford of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Captain James Hoban, the Irish-born architect of the White House. The day-to-day supervision of all construction was done by William Benton, who built Huntland and many other Middleburg properties. The house was finished in 1823, and Monroe named it Oak Hill for the 13 oak saplings he planted on the front lawn. Each oak was a gift from a congressman in one of the 13 original states. In addition to the Monroes, about 50 enslaved people worked and lived at Oak Hill. The house itself, as well as the outbuildings, were built with their labor. In Oak Hill's drawing room, Monroe wrote a 1823 document that became known as the Monroe Doctrine, the idea that any European intervention in the Western Hemisphere was a hostile act against the USA. In 1825, the famous Revolutionary War hero, the Marquis de Lafayette, visited Monroe at Oak Hill. He had given the Monroes the beautiful Italian marble mantelpieces as a thank you to James and Elizabeth for saving Madame de Lafayette from the guillotine when Monroe was minister to France. After his presidency, Monroe retired to Oak Hill in 1826. His wife Elizabeth died and was buried at the estate in 1830. Monroe then moved to New York to live with his daughter Maria, where he died on July 4, 1831, joining the other 2 founding fathers that also died on Independence Day. Decades later, both Monroes were reinterred in Richmond. Maria and her husband Samuel Gouverneur inherited Oak Hill and lived there until 1852, when they sold it to Lieutenant Colonel John Walter Fairfax. His son, Henry Fairfax, was the owner until 1920, when he sold it to Frank Campbell Littleton, the great-grandfather of Middleburg's current mayor, Bridge Littleton. Littleton enlarged the 1-story, 1-bay wings to 2 stories high, 2 bays long, with giant end porticos. He also discovered, along the banks of the little river that crosses the property, the old stone quarry that Monroe's workers had used. Here he found dinosaur footprints in flagstones that he installed in the house. They are still there today. In 1948, due to financial difficulties, Oak Hill was sold to the de Lashmutt family, who still own it today. The de Lashmutts are trying to have Oak Hill become a state park, which would conserve the land and be open to the public, like Mount Vernon, Montpelier, and Monticello. This would be an important memorial to a founding father of the nation.